Hey, it's John Carlos, and I'm here with
Eddie.
Eddie. And we like to talk movies, and we like to talk horror movies. And yeah, I watched all four Scream movies. I think you did too,
I did too.
leading up to this.
I did not watch the series. I have never seen the series.
I have seen the series, and
Okay.
I mean, I can throw in my 2 cents towards the end,
Okay.
but the movies,
Yeah.
and it's funny that I literally just brought it up, and then the next day or the same day, uh, the news came out that David Arquette has signed on for Scream 5. Well, they're not calling it Scream 5, but the fact that David Arquette's in it, you're like, it's Scream 5. The
Yeah.
fact that they were talking to Nev Campbell, it's Scream 5.
Yeah.
So yeah.
I actually saw there's a YouTuber I follow, Zach Cherry, spelled like it sounds. He did an update where the director had actually friended the core cast. So this leads a lot of people to believe that the entire core cast, that's my cat, sorry. The entire core cast might be returning. We can talk more about like our hopes for the sequel after the whole saga and everything. Spoilers, everybody.
But I will say,
Yeah.
before spoilers, that is totally a thing. We learn about when the screenwriter becomes friends with this actor, and the executive producer friends is now they're following each other on Twitter, and then 3 weeks later, it turns out that actor's in that person's movie. So it used to be the thing. I remember when they would register web domain names, and you would hear like, oh, Warner Brothers has bought HarryPotter8.com, and yada yada yada.
Right.
And now it's, did you hear? So and so is friends with Ben Affleck. Ben Affleck must be playing this,
Right.
But spoilers to anyone who hasn't seen the Scream movies: don't watch this if you haven't seen them, or
watch the movies
if you care anyway. But yeah,
you should care with this franchise, though.
you should. So yeah, I think Scream came out 1996, but like right at the end.
Yes.
If I remember correctly, it's funny.
December.
It's one of those movies. Yeah, the Scream 1 and 2 were both, I think, December releases. So, and Scream was, we hardly have this anymore. It used to happen a lot. Word of mouth hits. Where like Scream opened up in December, and it was just one of those cases where like it kind of did decent business. Like I haven't been to Box Office Mojo, but I remember it was like 7th, 5th, 6th place, somewhere on there, and it just kind of stayed at like 4th place, third, but several weeks, and it just became like a hit.
Yeah.
Whereas now the studios want to open with $200 million, and then we just watch how much it drops off.
Yeah.
But that was a true snowballing hit. That I don't think. I mean, I certainly wasn't ready for. Like no one. I remember just even the tagline. Not even the tagline, but under the screen would say like the new thriller from Wes Craven. Like,
yeah.
But there is something really creative, especially for its time, about the script and the movie that is better than just your average teen slasher thing. And the fact that I think the genre, specifically because horror had been doing okay in the 90s. Like I remember like Sony was doing a lot in the early to mid 90s. We had like Candyman, we had the Frankenstein, Wolf, Bram Stoker's Dracula. But zombie movies were kind of out. They died in like the early 90s. I think My Boyfriend's Back was like the last nail in that coffin. But
slasher movies were slowing down too.
Yeah, I can't recall any slasher movie prior to like 96. That was,
I mean, well, like, and like a first
like a hit.
Yeah, this definitely, and then Scream came out, and then all of a sudden, all of these teen slashers,
the rip-off wave, which we can get to, but like,
yeah.
But I mean, I would classify this. I mentioned this term in another one of our recordings, but like lightning in a bottle, and I think this movie does qualify.
Yeah, absolutely, I agree.
Yeah. everyone knows, like, there's nothing new to be said about like what Scream is and the basics of like why it works.
Mhm.
As far as so many horror movies or slasher movies in the 70s and 80s were pretty straightforward, and this one was meta before we even had the term meta. You know, I refer
Mhm.
to it as it was a postmodern horror movie.
Mhm.
And
Yeah.
even then, people were like, "Oh my god!" It became a thing once every Entertainment Weekly and Premiere Magazine were writing about it and referring to it. I remember them calling it the first postmodern horror movie. To which I
Mm.
say, "Bullshit." New New Nightmare was the first
Yeah.
postmodern horror movie, and that was also done by
Mhm.
Wes Craven. But it was very refreshing to hear the characters speak about the horror movies that we know and in the ways that we speak about them, so that it felt like this was taking place in the real world and that these characters understood.
But then to also realize in a very meta way that if we are within a horror movie, what are the rules? What are the first? It becomes kind of a benchmark with this franchise, and I didn't realize it started really late in this first movie. I mean, there are mentions made, like certainly there's the infamous first scene with Drew Barrymore as Casey Becker, I think her name,
Mhm.
and he's asking her. I mean, he names. They basically discuss like the top three, like the holy
Right.
trinity of slashers within the first 5 minutes. You got Freddy, you got Jason, and you've got Michael Myers. And you've got the whole quiz and everything like that. You have a lot of other things going on in that scene, though. But and then after that, same kind of thing with Sydney when she gets her first call, and she talks about, she doesn't watch scary movies because it's a girl, a big-breasted girl who's too dumb to be running out the door. Instead, she runs up the stairs, and then what does she do? She runs up the stairs. But the first time you really kind of get a sense the characters talking about themselves consciously, I feel like is Jamie Kennedy. I always want to call him Jamie. His character is
Randy.
Randy. I know.
You're gonna say the video
It's
store
gonna
scene.
happen again. But when he and Stu, played by Matthew Lillard, are in the video store, full on discussing the rules of like what must happen and what must happen, like, and exclaims one of the biggest laughs I had even this last time watching it, when he just starts exclaiming, it's a formula to it, a very simple formula. Everyone's a suspect. Anyway, I didn't even mean to go into all this, um, but I just, one thing that I noticed, especially like watching them all again, I didn't have to. We discussed the fact that we've seen these movies enough that like we easily could have had a conversation
I
without talking about
I
them.
did not need
I
a
mean,
rewatch.
without seeing them.
Yeah.
But it's fun. And also, you don't know what you're going to see or what's going to occur to you when you do a rewatch. Because I posted a ranking of this on my Instagram a few months back. So I thought I knew. But I still thought, I haven't seen it in a few months. We're going to talk in depth. Maybe something will jump out at me. And you know what? A few things did. There's actually an upset. I've changed my ranking, and we'll get into that at the end.
Oh.
Yeah. But with this first movie, though, the thing that struck me the most is I don't ever check out. There was always something interesting that's engrossing me in the film, and it's multiple characters, multiple things happening within the movie, whether the movie is self-consciously discussing itself or whether it's just watching Sydney kind of come into her own, going from being just this kind of girl who's experienced a loss with her mother, with this quasi mystery around it. She only has kind of what she's believed up until this point, and slowly the facts keep presenting themselves in a way that makes her look at it and identify, like, okay, is this really who my mother was? Do I even know who she was? That's basically Sydney's role, aside from what's assigned to her by Billy and Stu. But the biggest thing for me upon rewatching that is kind of like the magnet in for me, is Billy and Stu themselves. Especially if you're watching it after the first time you watch Scream, you go back and you watch it with fresh eyes, knowing who the killers are, and watching the way they play their roles, like Billy and Stu playing just typical teenage boys, and the way they both kind of fail at it periodically throughout the film. With Matthew Lillard, I feel like the examples are just his lack of decorum, and you can make up for it that he's just like this immature high school boy. But Tatum, Rose McGowan, is always like kind of batting him on the head or rolling her eyes at him because he's behaving inappropriately, making jokes, you know, a teenage boy might make.
He's very much. I mean, there were times where I was him.
Yes.
Yeah.
But he's also, when you look at it in retrospect, you're just kind of like, oh, this is a sociopath who even like little things like that chill me, like after he lets on into the film, when he lets Sid and Tatum know that the party's going on for the climax of the movie, and he knows that Sydney's coming, and he just kind of goes, nice. And then when they start walking away, like, see you tonight, he's like, bring food. And he just does one of these to no one, but he just goes, like, we're going to do some killing tonight. And it's horrifying to me.
You know, yeah, I never thought about it. I mean, because I always thought of it, even to this day when I know he's the killer, I still think he's just, I like parties. Yeah. You know, like,
Yeah.
I mean, he is out in the public in front of people. I never thought of maybe the subtext of why he's so excited, but
I think he also knows that because he's a teenage boy, he's kind of the perfect, I mean, on some level, I think this is why Billy also doesn't have a problem kind of linking up with him, because he can't do it all alone. He needs somebody. Why would you ever pick Stu? Because you can almost just attribute it to he's got no filter. He's just a typical American teenage boy, just having good, clean fun. And I keep doing this, I'm sorry. And, but Billy, watching him again too, like, the first time around, I remember girls in the 90s, everybody had a huge crush on Skeet Ulrich, and I didn't get it.
I remember your sister had a crush on him, and you're like, no.
And my bestie too, Bonnie, would not, she had specific moments she would remember in her head while we were just hanging out and just be like, and just go, ooh, like when Sydney, and my sister confirmed this, when Sydney, first scene where they're in her bedroom and she's just kind of relents and goes like, okay, fine, why not? And he's just like, he raises his eyebrows and he's kind of in profile, he's just kind of like, yeah. And for some reason,
I think they use that in every commercial.
Yeah, and the girls the world over, and maybe some guys too, not me, but I mean, I'm gay, but didn't work for me. and I like a lot of cinematic sociopaths too, but not Billy,
yeah.
not Billy.
He's no Norman Bates, no.
No, he's no Norman Bates. But I should create a roster of my top sociopath crushes in cinema. But yeah, you were gonna say?
I find it fun that Randy, the one who understands not only the rules of the movie, but how they apply to our world.
Yeah.
The one thing that really stood out to me this time when I'm watching it, when he's doing his rant in the video store, is everyone listen to him. He's totally right.
Yeah.
He's totally right.
Yes.
Like, he's literally saying it's him, and here's why it's him. And the movie does a good job of saying like, okay, well, he was in jail that night, and then even after like they sleep together in the last act, they sit. They do enough things to create the doubt, but then to dispel the doubt. But I love that Randy's like, no, it's him.
And that's another, oh my God, so many laughs in this movie, and so many of them are born out of just not scripted jokes, but the delivery, like just Jamie Kennedy and Matthew Lillard's face at the end of the video store scene, just going, you're telling me that's not a killer? I can still hear my family, like my uncles and my cousins and my aunts, just laughing their asses off as I rewatch the first movie. And Matthew Lillard, most of the time, like whenever he's on screen, particularly as the film progresses, like the video store scene and the climax, I was laughing my ass off
and some
in
of
the
his
kitchen.
Stuff is improv, like his improv. And
yeah,
you and I have experienced plenty of actors' bad improv, but I know that when Billy, like, and like the blood was sticky on his hands. So when he threw the phone
Mm.
down, it hit. He's like, "Oh, you hit me with the
With
fucking
the fucking phone, man.
And it's so typical for actors to just repeat the action and have that be
Yeah.
their improv. But
Yeah.
the place that it's coming from makes it really, really funny. And I can't remember if he improved My Parents Are Gonna Be So Mad at Me.
Oh my God. Like, even if he didn't, there's a way to deliver that line in a way that isn't anywhere near as funny or even as over the top, certainly, but authentic. I mean, we're watching a little boy now at this point. We're watching a little preschooler who just doesn't want to get in trouble with mommy and daddy.
Well, up until
Like,
this point, he was pretty confident he was going to get away with everything. And only now does he feel like there's consequences.
right.
And what's great to me
And
is that the wit of the movie and the tightrope walk that it walks is that right before that line, it's pretty serious. And even in that moment, Billy's going around the corner looking to kill Sydney, and the
yeah,
music, right? Like it's hard to throw in a joke. It could, as far as when you add levity, but within the moment, I
yeah,
still buy it. Does it feel like
yeah.
producers saying we need to have a joke right now?
And it's not even just one joke. It is literally every line at a certain point in the scenes. I think after Sydney kind of realizes exactly what's going on and they start kind of, stabbing each other. It is literally one line after the other. Matthew Lillard says, and I am pissing myself laughing.
Yeah.
And
What
at the
did you
same
do?
time,
We take some notes. It was fun. I
but
love that.
even like,
I love that Stu and Billy are so touchy. By the way,
yeah, no, okay, that
to
was
have
one
two
thing because,
dudes be like
yeah.
that gropey in the video store and in the kitchen,
Mhm. But
two
that was, yeah,
two hetero
it
dudes.
never stood out to me. And maybe it's because the first time I saw it, I was closeted. But even after I came out, I'd watch it and I just like watch Scream. I enjoy this movie. And it wasn't until like recent years, maybe like the last decade, that I started hearing people ramble about like some kind of like homoerotic something, maybe some
I
subtext going on with them. And the only time I felt it this time, because I was kind of looking, was again, it's because something else entirely, my focus is on something else in the scene, but it's when Billy's talking to Sydney, like has her backed up against the sink and he's giving her all the exposition, but Stu just kind of like puts his head, and I can
Mhm.
think about like all my straight male friends I don't think I would ever do this to. I don't think I'd do this to my gay male friends either. This is like, it's like, what are we doing here? Where are we going with this?
And
I think he literally like just rests his chin and he's almost on top of Billy, and Billy's totally comfortable with it, and there's nothing wrong with that, but I just never noticed it because the fact that they're both focused so much on Sydney and not engrossed with each other, I think that's why it never really stood out to me. And because what's happening also because Skeet Ulrich is doing really, really good work as this other psychopath, giving exposition, doing impossible things, and also playing off this over the top performance that's still connected, but he's giving a very different kind of over the top performance. And yet the two of them together, it works so well. There's just too much to focus on in that scene. I think that's why the homoeroticism, sorry about the rabbit ears again, never stood out to me before. Because believe me, I would look, maybe it's also because Matthew Lillard's cute, but he's so veiny at that point. I'm just kind of like looking at him thinking like, you're dying. Oh my God. You're just, I mean, he's spit and veins. Like he's just spit and veins and red in the face screaming. Maybe that's why I'm not attracted to him in that scene.
I do think it's funny that that the Scary Movie,
Mm-hmm.
the Wayans brothers one, uh, plays
Yeah.
really into like the gay joke. And
Yeah.
I remember at the time I just like, okay, he's playing it gay. And then
Yeah.
the scene at the end where he's like, no, I ain't gay. What?
Yeah.
What? No, what do I? But now I get like why, like I get where that came from. Even though
Yeah.
like 16-year-old me in, 96 didn't get it
Yeah.
on my radar. But now I'm like, okay.
Mm-hmm. I also, it's funny, a lot of things stand out. Like Scary Movie, it's interesting because it's almost kind of inescapable with the initial trilogy. Um, because I feel like Scary Movie got just as iconic, satirizing these iconic moments in the Scream trilogy. But some of them I didn't even, I remember watching it and feeling like it was kind of, well-founded here and there. But the gay thing, like you said, I didn't see the connection either. I just kind of thought, oh, that's funny. Like, oh, they're gay or not or whatever. Oh, okay, this makes for conflict, a different kind of conflict.
Yeah, it was just
I'm
hee
down
hee
for
hee.
this.
It was
Yeah, it
random and
was.
funny, and it turns out it's like rooted in something.
Yeah. Now, now I
Yeah,
see it. The
I
other one I
actually,
didn't. Yeah, go on.
just side tangent. I remember being initially upset at the idea of Scary Movie, just because I Wes Craven has said Scream isn't a comedy, but I always thought like, but it's funny, and it's definitely a way. I wouldn't call it. I can't commit to calling it a full blown comedy, but there was a period where I was like, yeah, it's a comedy, and here's why. And because I knew everything. I was 16 and I watched movies.
Right.
It's not scary. It's funny, um, but it is very funny. But there's no denying that Scream has humor on its agenda, that it has satire on its agenda without being a spoof. It
Hmm.
is still satirizing and playing with and being very funny and fast and loose with things. And then for them to be like, oh, we're going to make a funny version of it. I'm like, bitch, there already was a funny version of it. It was called Scream. Like, this is a bad idea. And then it turned out Scary Movie was a good time.
Oh yeah,
And also
yeah.
it's because Scream became more than what it became a touchstone. And
Yes.
it was no longer just a movie that was satirizing something. It became a thing, you know,
Yeah.
a
I
benchmark. So
mean,
I see
the
why let's
yeah.
spoof the benchmark. But that it, to me, I still can't commit to calling it a comedy. But I mean, just from a script standpoint, what it's trying to do to deconstruct horror and the ways it
Mm,
does it automatically make it funny.
mm,
Then the fact that the characters and the writing style is so witty.
mhm.
Um, it's it's as close as you can get to being a comedy while still being like a straight-faced horror movie. That's what I love about this movie is it's so more than one thing, and it succeeds at both without ever stepping into lampooning.
Right.
Um,
The I can understand. I can understand everything you're saying. The thing about the comedy aspect that I mean, maybe in its way, like I don't even know if I should. I didn't even think about this, so I don't know if I should compare it to American Werewolf in London. I think the only reason I would is because whatever that movie needs to be, whatever in both cases, whatever the movie needs to be, it succeeds. Because the opening scene of Scream, for instance, not funny. There are no laughs in that. Drew is playing it straight horror. The only thing that's really kind of meta. Oh, you're making a face. Okay. The
there
only
are
thing that's meta
laughs.
for. Huh? When? Okay. Anyway, the
Keep
only thing
going.
that because I don't associate that with. I don't watch that movie and think like, oh, comedy. I mean, that first scene. I don't think, oh, I'm in for a comedy now. I feel like I'm in for a very legit horror movie that's just kind of self-conscious because they're discussing horror movies in it. That's the most meta we get. We don't kind of reach the cornerstone of the Scream franchise, the benchmarks of the franchise, until well into the movie. But I'm along for the ride for everything that gets us there. What were you going to
I'll
say?
just say this. I'll just say this. You're right. Once things take a serious turn, there are no laughs. But if we're gonna call it the opening scene, like when he calls, there's 900 numbers for that. Ha ha ha! Everyone laughs. You know,
I don't know.
oh, I mean, I saw this movie in theaters like 4 times, and every time,
Okay.
and then they're on the phone, and what's your favorite scary movie? Oh, Nightmare on Elm Street. Is that the one where? Yeah, that one was scary. Well, the first one was, but the rest sucked.
It sucked.
Ha 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 ha!
Oh, okay.
Everyone's laughing. You know
Not
what?
really jokey jokes
No, no,
though.
they're
I
not
mean, it's
jokey
not
jokes, but I
a
mean, as far
comedy.
as, but
Yeah.
I don't know. Do you ever? I don't know if you ever do this, but do you ever think the way like maybe like the writer thinks? Like I still the people, it's just everyone behind it. Like I still think it's funny, even if it's not a joke.
Yeah.
And every time I saw that movie, every single time with an audience, when she's like, "No bullshit, Jason, I saw that movie 100 goddamn times." Well, then you would know
Yeah.
this is Voorhees was the original killer. Always got.
Guys, sorry. Kitty's mewing.
I mean,
Go on. Sorry.
audiences are desperate for levity, so
Sure.
like
Oh yeah.
that always got a laugh.
Okay.
Uh, but yeah, no, that opening scene. First of all, come on, that opening scene.
Oh god.
Because what was great, I mean, I fell for it hook, line, and sinker because I think I went opening weekend. right
Mm-hmm.
within the first like 2 weeks. But I mean, that movie did the thing that it was trying to do from the marketing standpoint, which is using shots of Drew Barrymore in the commercials, putting her head on
Yes.
the poster.
In the
Uh,
front of the poster, like the main
yeah,
focus.
I had
Yeah.
no idea she wasn't going to survive the movie, and
Mm-hmm.
instantly when that scene, I mean, shades
Yeah.
of Psycho for sure. But
Yes.
as far
Absolutely.
as misleading your audience, but
Uh-huh.
and also just everything about that. I mean, when I watch this now, the word classic jumps in my head a lot. But I mean, and again, lightning in a bottle, you're not showing up to make a classic. You're just showing up to make the thing the best version that you can. And
Mm-hmm.
also, she's great in it.
She's
She's so
phenomenal.
there are so many, and there's certain actors that we like because we don't want too much range from them. We want to see Christopher Walken do his Christopher Walken thing, you know.
Yeah.
And Drew Barrymore there's something about Drew that we like that I think really works in a lot of the performances she's done that they aren't some huge character performance, but there's something about like what is that? Is that popcorn? Like
Yeah,
there
yes.
is no in like any other movie she's done.
Yeah.
Casey Decker is something else from Drew, and I don't think he gets enough credit for being such a great performance.
No,
Not
I
to mention all the horror she goes through and yada yada. She plays all that very well.
well, because I don't know that I'm ever more scared in the movie than I am in that opening scene because of everything she does. Because from the moment, like, yeah, the because you're just like, oh, she's so cute. I mean, she's likable, but when she's vulnerable, like everything, even that happens to her physically, that I don't see her manipulate. I don't see the gears turning. But I just kind of hear the quiver in her voice. I see her hand shaking. And the score too. I noticed for the first time because I was watching this, trying to watch it with as critical an eye as I could. When she's like leaning by the television and unplugging lights and still on the phone, and music is the music has this pulse going, and I'm like, oh my god, it's got me with her heartbeat. You know, like it does everything to put me in her shoes, and and it does it successfully. And then even her fear, it's not, we scream when she screams. Like the first time that face gets revealed, I remember, because I didn't see this in the theaters. I saw it after the fact, at home alone on television at night, 16 or 17, probably 17 years old by that point. But and all I knew was it was good, no spoilers. So I just kind of thought, oh, this Drew Barrymore movie I'm going to watch, Wes Craven is doing something else. I should check it out. Everybody, it seems to be a hit. So I'm watching this opening scene and I'm like, oh my god, she's okay, she better get through this. How's she going to get through this? And so every time there's a glimmer of hope, I thought she was going to break away. But then when what kind of clinched it for me is like when she gets stabbed and the knife goes in, and the sound effects they use, the angle it goes in, they kind of get to show off the solidness of the knife. And it doesn't look like one of those, knives that disappear into her chest, even though it probably
Even though it
was.
is, yeah.
Yeah, but it looked solid. Something about, I don't know why, but something about that take, it worked. But then her reaction afterward, the fact that she doesn't just get stabbed and start chewing the scenery. She lays there, she's hyperventilating. The wound, the blood is continuously flowing the way it would. It's dark. She's looking at it and panicking. She's like, and she's crying, and she's fighting back, and everything, and she's doing everything you're supposed to do now, but it's just too late. It's just not gonna happen. And then the fact that her death isn't celebrated, the fact that her parents are there, you see them lose her. You hear her mother going, Casey, baby, no, it's Casey, not my
And I
daughter,
think we get like a
not my
best
daughter.
angle when it's happening too. Like,
Yeah, but it's everything about it is engrossing. It just feeds on your empathy, because here's a girl you like. This is a horrible thing that's happening to her. I wouldn't want to know anybody who's going, yeah, during
oh
that
no, no.
kill.
If anything, I mean, from a writing standpoint, again, it's almost mean if you think of the characters as real characters. The fact that her parents are coming home and like she's just like she's literally like calling out for her dad. Like they miss her by like a series of just a matter of feet, which is just so
Yeah.
cruel. It's literally almost every other murder you've ever seen in a horror movie. They're usually alone, or there isn't the safety, the hope, the help isn't right there or within like arm's reach.
Yeah.
That's what makes it so tragic to me.
And it's also nightmarish because the thing is, like, I feel like sometimes things can be kind of nihilistic and hopeless, and I disconnect from it because it just feels so brutal. But this feels like a brutal that I viscerally am connected with, and that I'm also thinking, yeah, I'd probably be just as scared if I saw myself bleeding. The nightmare thing of screaming and not being able, that is literally like a common function or a fail in a nightmare is the screaming. Same way, like trying to outrun something and not being able to,
Oh
like
yeah.
it's catching up with you. I even as a kid, I used to have like nightmares of things reaching for me that I was running from, and always just beyond the fingertips reach. And the nightmare part was the speculating what happens if I get caught. And then also the discovery of her. I remember there was a director's cut that was,
I
or an
I was going to
uncut,
bring this up. Yeah.
yeah, an unrated cut version. I don't remember much being revealed. Maybe you can help with if there's anything outside this scene, but the only things I recognized that were really different were the gore of the intestines of Steve, the boyfriend, when he's tied. You get a more lingering shot on them falling out of him, and then you also get, it was already terrifying and horrible, but you get a slower at the last shot of the walking up to the body, and it's scary, and it's also heartbreaking, even more so because you realize you're in the father's footsteps as he's
Oh.
closing in
See,
on his daughter, because it's slower, so it's like you're literally walking toward her in almost real time. And maybe it was just too horrible for the censors, and that's why it's all sped up. But sped up, I don't like it either, because I'm just gonna like, I don't want to be near her. No, this is terrible.
how did you
But it's
see
over
this?
quickly.
Because I remember in the 90s when the director's cut was available
Hmm.
for pay-per-view,
Mm.
there was there was no VHS or Laserdisc director's cut. To this day, there's no director's cut. I remember you had to like pay for it on pay-per-view. But I
Hmm.
remember reading an interview. No, they talked about it. I think in the commentary or what in the commentary because he talks about how the original rating they didn't get the R, and one of the things they had to do was pull tons of frames from the push-in. He's like, originally this was a much slower push-in.
Yeah.
He had to pull all these frames to make it like this jaggedy zoom in
Hmm.
because they were like, the shot's too long. So okay, forget.
Right.
And then I'm glad you mentioned the guts of the boyfriend because I never knew they were in the director's cut, but I presumed they were because
Hmm.
it feels painfully obvious when I watch that scene. When we
Hmm.
linger on Drew Barrymore's face for a long time and you just hear a bunch of sound effects,
Hmm.
and it's cut back to him with his guts out. I'm like,
Yeah.
this feels like an edit. It
Yeah.
really feels like one. So too, when it stays on Sydney's face and you just hear a bunch of stabbings, and then we cut back to like Stu bloody. I'm like, I
Mm.
bet you they shot those stabs and we had to lose them to get an R.
Oh, maybe I wasn't.
But the Drew Barrymore
Maybe
one's way more noticeable.
absolutely, and both of them were. I
But
was just kind of like, oh my god, is this what the whole movie's going to be like? And the rest of the movie just felt like the movie,
yeah,
which is fine.
The Sydney one in the kitchen draws its attention because you never see Billy turn to
Mhm.
do anything. It's literally just like a shot of him and then a shot of her, and he just gets stabbed. Like there's no sense of motion to it. It's just Stu's bloodier now. That's weird. But
Yeah.
yeah, the guts always felt like a cut to me. So you saw this?
Yes. Again, thanks to my sister and her, because she was really into this movie, and I mean, so was I. But I mean, she went to go see it in the theaters. She was the one who was telling me it was really, really good. And I for whatever reason, I think I was always grounded in high school, so I probably wasn't able to go. In fact, I said December, and I'm not even sure if that was the release month. I know it was for the second one, and I think I might have mixed them up. So
But
sorry
I know it
if I
was
messed it
the
up for
end of
anybody.
'96 though.
Okay,
Because I
cool.
know each
Then
movie, like it felt like a '97 movie. The second one felt like it was in '98, but like I know that they technically came out at the end of the year before.
okay, cool. Well, good.
Weird shit I
Glad we
remember of it.
glad hopefully we didn't. I'm glad we didn't fuck it up if we didn't. So yeah, so
So did she get the pay-per-view and like record it?
she actually, I think a friend of hers got the pay-per-view and recorded it, and then was just making copies, like, putting two VCRs together and making all these bootlegs for her, for anyone who wanted one. I think my sister got a hold of one. I even remember in her writing "Scream uncut" or unrated, and I watched it, just kind of thinking, well, what more could there be? Watch the opening scene, and I was like, oh my gosh, this is terrible. And then, like I said, the rest of the movie just felt like the movie, which was fine.
Yeah, that's
Um,
all I've ever heard Wes Craven talk about was the little
mhm.
edits to make it R.
um, but I mean, a great opening for like a little Wes Carpenter flick,
Yeah.
and it just makes me. But the thing is, what I love, because I remember the scene immediately following the first time, because I was chilled. I mean, I'm watching it alone, so I'm not laughing. You know me. When I take things seriously, I'm like, oh no. And I didn't start laughing until well into the movie. But the second we cut away from Drew and went to Sydney, to Nev Campbell's face, I remember thinking, oh shit, we're going to start all over again. I remember thinking, my immediate thought was, is this going to be like an anthology movie, only maybe it's going to be 3 chapters, maybe it's going to be 5, I don't know, but is each chapter going to be like the killer calling somebody else, terrorizing them, but each time maybe the person's a little bit more prepared. They know about the killings that have been going on in this like small town, and maybe all these people that I'm looking at on the cover of this DVD, maybe each one of them is going to be the story. Like, I had a whole thing crafted in my head, and then the movie progressed, and I was like, oh, well, that's not what's happening. But I still think about it when I watch the movie now. Um, but one thing, again, what else can we talk about with this movie? Because there's so much. I don't feel like it ever wanes. I don't feel ever disinterested in what's going on. Even I wanted to ask about this because, of course, they figure in to the core group as the franchise progresses. But I was trying to identify Gale and Dewey.
Hmm.
Is there any equivalent in any other slasher franchises or horror franchises that you can think of? Because I was like, it's so specific. First of all, the way they meet, the way they kind of flirt with each other, the way they kind of end up coming together, and the fact that the final girl isn't on her own through any of the movies that she goes through. I mean, we'll talk about the sequels as we get there, but I mean, can you think of any other kind of comrades?
No, because I mean, very rarely you have like when first of all, it's very rare where your hero is the through line for a horror franchise. So you've got Ash to a certain degree, you've got Laurie Strode,
Right.
um, maybe Nancy for 2 movies, but never like a quartet or a trio or a.
Yeah.
In fact, to me, that's what makes the sequels so interesting. And I'm not
Hmm.
moving on to the sequels yet, but the idea that your average, what, 98% of the time when
Yeah.
you have sequels, it's the villain who's the through line, and we have to have a
Yeah.
new cast of characters. Yeah,
Yeah.
this is the only one we're like, no, no, we kill the villain each time. It's the same cast or the same core 3 or 4 cast, and it's a
Yeah.
new villain each time.
Yeah.
And yeah,
Oh,
it's telling that
yeah.
even in the first movie, in the credits, it's still they always get I mean, David Arquette was not for some reason. David Arquette, Courtney Cox, and Nev Campbell get the top 3 billings, and everything after them is not alphabetical. There's something about those first 3. I get it in the sequels that they get the top 3 billing, but there's something telling that even in the first movie,
Hmm.
those 3 get billings and credit first.
Well, because Gale isn't quite the Gale we come to depend on. I think the Gale we would look for in a Scream 5 coming up. Um, by the end of this movie, I feel like the seeds have been planted. Like, we know she's an opportunist, a kind of, cutthroat journalist who should be off in New York, doing the Sharon Stone, but she's here. She's in
She does
Woodsboro.
not.
She's
She does
going to get
not.
the job done. She doesn't care.
She doesn't
And,
validate people's feelings about anything. It's her intent.
yeah, because if she believes she's pursuing the truth, then there's no talking to her, almost to a ruthless degree, to a discompassionate degree. But then she starts flirting with Dewey, and it starts off like a manipulation. It feels like it.
Absolutely.
But then as it progresses, and then you start to think like, well, I see right through you and I know who you are. Then she's got some kind of integrity the second time she has an encounter with Sydney, and they discuss Cotton Weary, and she's like, he hasn't changed a word of his story, and you're not so sure anymore, are you? Wait, Sydney, come on. And you still feel like she's pursuing the truth, but ultimately it's to serve herself. You know what that could do for my book sales. But then I remember particularly the first time where we don't know who the killers are, when Dewey, after they've gone into the party and she's planted her camera, Dewey sits there and shines a flashlight on his face when who wants to, how about we go take a walk? And
Flashlight.
and he's just kind of like, come on, you're not scared, are you? And I'm like, oh shit, he's an idiot savant. Like, he's been faking the whole time. He's the killer. He's gonna get you, Gail. That's what this whole thing has been about. No, couldn't be further from the truth.
I remember,
and in fact, it ends up being pretty romantic.
In fact, people, not to be like every time I saw this in theaters, but I remember whenever he'd walk up to the phone after the killer calls Sydney, before he ruins it by saying hello, the fact that he walks up kind of serious. I remember hearing people in high school, oh my God, like, it's him.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then I think the hello was improvised too. I think I heard that on a commentary
I think
once.
it was, yeah.
Like, oh my God. And good for him for letting these actors improvise. Yeah.
Another thing, maybe not an actor improvisation, but a director improvisation, was originally Dewey died. And then when they had the ambulances and everything set up for the exterior of the house at the end, Wes was like, and they did it in one shot. He's like, hey, really quick, let's get a shot of Dewey on the stretcher. If audiences like him, I think I might want to have this in my back pocket in case we end up liking him.
And thank God.
The final cut, yeah.
Because that is one of the heartbreaking kills. I keep doing this, I'm sorry. One of the heartbreaking kills when he's exiting the archway and he's just like, Sid? Yeah. He's got the knife in his back, and you're just kind of like, oh yeah, you can't fake that. I mean, I guess you could, like Billy kind of did, but that was another thing I remember thinking. This movie kind of depended on me being forgiving so often to either actors not giving necessarily kind of on point performances, or I'm thinking about the effect when Billy gets stabbed, but and he turns around and his shirt is not ripped. He's got the corn syrup all over his tummy, but there's obviously no entry wound. And we saw it. It was quick. The killer didn't lift his shirt up and then stab him. And I can still reason it out thinking like, okay, well, Sydney, first of all, anyone would have a natural aversion toward looking directly at a wound, I feel, if they just see like a pool of blood. Particularly Sydney, though, given her backstory at the top of this film and everything that's transpired up until now. Yeah, the fact that, so I mean, it kind of makes sense, but I mean, I thought it was just a poor effect. And then later, the movie's just kind of like, no, it wasn't.
No, it wasn't
he was faking.
No, because you can even see that he's bent over and he's got his hand on his stomach, which is where he smeared the blood, and then he whips around. Yeah. And I'm like, you just rubbed blood on your belly and whipped around, and you're holding up the hand. Sid. Yeah. There's more blood on the hand than there was on the shirt.
Yeah, but that brings me also to my other kind of like great diversion. I mean, of course, the script provides these incredible red herrings over and over and over again, and I think they're really effective, particularly in this first movie. The thing is, I want to talk about Billy for a bit, because I spent my first viewing watching this not really knowing who Skeet Ulrich was, although I think I saw him in The Craft after this, and Nev Campbell too. But
this was Fisher Price, my first Skeet Ulrich movie.
Right. So all I knew was he's just kind of like a Johnny Depp looking lanky dude with greasy hair, and I thought he wasn't a good actor as I was watching it, because I was just kind of like, he's doing all the cliche boyfriend shit. Like he's sitting there. I just thought about all the lines. Some that didn't even like make entire sense. Like some I had to discuss with people when he's talking to Sid, and he in the hallway at the school after he's already been interrogated by police. They've let him go, and he's just kind of like, yeah, see, it couldn't have been me. I was in jail. Remember?
Yeah.
And, I remember that I busted out laughing at because it was so stupid. I was like, you didn't wash your hands since last night. I'm like, what is this? Who is this guy? And I love the fact that in retrospect, I can watch it and think like, well, he wanted to have a dramatic effect. That whole scene, he is doing a really, really bad job, a sociopath's bad job of trying to practice empathy with Sydney by going like, he's throwing everything at her, just kind of like, no, it's just like, I mean, you haven't been the same since your mother died. And because I'm a sociopath, and this is all like in parentheses, and because I'm a sociopath, I don't really understand what it is to lose someone, you know, in a mortal way. I'm really, I can't really express empathy. So I'm just going to act like I just want my girlfriend back. It's a bad analogy, but I mean, I lost my mom too. I mean, she left town, but you know, I
Yeah,
realized she's
that
never
was the
coming back.
worst
And
attempt at
it's,
empathy.
and at first you just kind of think like he's just, because there have been already questionable exchanges with her other friends, maybe just she doesn't have the greatest friend group, and in high school sometimes that's true.
Sometimes, yeah.
Yeah, but he's literally a psychopath trying to be a caring boyfriend, trying to play out a scene that he's scripted in his head, and it worked out differently than it is right now. And it was like, okay, sorry, it's a bad analogy. It's just, I'm going to cut to the quick, go for the jugular, as it were. I just want my girlfriend back. And she's like, listen, I'm sorry if my existence, you know, is too much for you and your perfect, you know, existence, whatever. She went in the bathroom and he does that, one of my favorite things, just like, stupid. And I'm just like, that's the killer going, fuck.
Yep.
I fucked it up. I had it. I even got released by the police, and I'm the killer. Literally,
Yep.
he is the killer in the opening scene. This is also the most fun film out of all of them for me to break down who's where, because Stu has an alibi. He was with Tatum, so you know he was the one on the phone while Billy was the one running around doing the nasty work.
This one and well, actually, all of them line up when you play that game. But yes, this one is a little bit more fun to connect the dots to. But you're right.
All of them? We'll get there.
No, well, actually, I would argue 3 pushes
there you go.
the ability of man, this guy can get everywhere.
We'll get there.
But no, but you're right. Essentially showing up after having the greatest alibi ever and being like, I mean, because I have a girlfriend that would rather accuse me of murder than touch me. Like, yeah. Dude, you're not helping your case here. You're just... One thing that really changed for me, this is one of the few things that changed about the rewatch, and it was a pretty big change for me. It might be laughable for me to not have felt this way before, but
yeah.
Every time I've watched this movie, all through my teens and 20s, I view it as a cast of characters, and I view it, I can't help it. Certain things I think about, and I think about it from a producery writer standpoint. I go, oh, that was a good choice. That was good. I'm not always like in it. And I always thought this franchise, especially this first movie and the second one, since they do have a meta tone to them, I've never taken the text too seriously. To a certain degree, I do. I remember when I saw Scream 2, spoiler alert, when Randy dies and when Dewey gets stabbed, I was like, oh, like I do feel things. But I never really felt a whole lot in this franchise. But now that I'm older and have experienced more things at 39 than I did when I was 16, as far as life and as far as death goes, and the way death hits you and different people handle different things, I watched this movie like for the first time ever, 100% like on Sydney's point of view. Like,
yes,
completely on Sydney.
Yeah,
which I've never really done before, where I was that connected to her. So when they're dealing with how, because they don't reveal that her mom's dead right away. We know that something happened. The principal is like, oh, this is Sydney, daughter of so-and-so. And then we get to the news and
Tatum too. The same thing. Like, it's the worst. Police say it's like the worst thing that's happened since, in a long time.
First of all, when you have someone that close to you die, I don't care if you're teenagers. Like, her friends are insensitive as shit.
Yeah,
they're all sitting around a fountain just talking about stabbing and gutting, and even her friends, like, even Tatum's like, yeah, it's the worst thing since, like, she's like, since your mom died. Like, they're all kind of shit. but the fact
Tatum
that
straddles being a good friend with
but
being a bad friend for me. But yeah.
but she's clearly that's not something you're going to get over right away. And Billy, I don't think I've ever hated Billy more than I did this viewing when he's like, "There's my girlfriend back. Like we started out as this, and then we stopped doing stuff, and it's been a while." And to the degree where he's like, "Your mom died a year ago. Like get over it."
Yeah.
Fuck you.
Yeah.
I couldn't fucking stand him in this movie, and I felt terrible for her that she hardly has. It seems like her father is kind of there for, but there's no one who has a sense of respect for her grief
Well, because even
and
this is where I kind of
the expectations
yeah.
of her to just like, oh, you'll just normalize out, right? Like you'll get over it, and
Right.
then you'll fuck your boyfriend.
Just shake it off. It's been a
Yeah,
year,
yeah.
but
And it's not just she died of old age,
and we're
like she was
celebrating the
raped and murdered.
anniversary. A
Remember, she was
year
raped and
later,
murdered. It's 1
celebrating
year
the
later.
anniversary.
Yeah,
Yeah.
the 1 year later.
But
By the way, the
yeah.
1 year later of not just that your mom was murdered, that your mom was raped and murdered,
Yep.
and that we find out that it wasn't an adult that she was sleeping with. It wasn't Cotton Weary.
Yeah.
No, it was a teenage boy or two. We don't know if they
Two
both.
of your peers. Yeah.
Yeah, two of your friends raped your mom.
Enough said. Like, who's gonna tell you to get over that?
Right. But also that makes Billy and Stu bigger monsters.
Oh fuck yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. And
Like we
in a
yeah.
pre-Columbine world, the idea of like, oh, these teenagers who are going to go and commit atrocious acts.
Mm-hmm.
It felt like the stuff of fiction, and they even say like, oh, we watched some movies and we took some notes, and we're basically two like entitled white kids who like are going to study some movies and go have some fun.
Sure. Well, yeah.
I mean, it's the intention. It comes back again in a different way for Scream 2, the idea of someone who watches movies and hears their intentions. But
Mm-hmm.
what movie did you watch where like, oh, and we'll rape her too?
Yeah. Well,
Like they are
yeah.
psychopaths first and foremost.
Absolutely, yeah. But there
Who
are
then
movies.
also
I mean,
took some notes on too many movies.
yeah, who have seen too many. Like they were the wrong people to be watching these movies, hands down, because they're not going to be fun at any of these conventions. But I also feel like this is where the hand of Wes Craven directing at this stage in his career helps a lot with me still being able to know that, take it in at the right point, and use it to hate them. And yet at the same time, she doesn't directly confront them in that final thing. Like it's enough that they've been killed. That's kind of what we focus on. It's more like it's something that's alluded to, kind of like Freddy Krueger's child molestation in the first movie. The most mention we get in Wes Craven's version of that is, he was a filthy child murderer. And that's and then also all of the sexual gravitas that Robert Englund brought to it as this like shadow figure. But so I feel like Wes Craven, because he was very rapey in the 70s with his movies.
Yeah.
And very nihilistic. And then I feel like Nightmare on Elm Street was a turning point, and then you watch everything he's done after that, and he's no longer that director. He is now this director. And Scream feels kind of like, I love New Nightmare, but I can understand when people say New Nightmare was the film. What did we talk about with the other? Oh, with Don Mancini for Seed of Chucky versus Curse of Chucky. You do the one for them and the one for me. The New Nightmare felt like one for me, maybe, and for the hardcore Freddy fans who just can't get enough, Scream was the one for them. Like, let me just fill this out as much as I possibly can and make the biggest crowd pleaser of a movie that I can, and still have it be me, making the decisions. And I thought he did that so successfully with this movie.
Yeah. First of all, I mean, he could have phoned it in after that opening scene, because there's so many specific camera choices, and even I tend to roll my eyes at a Dutch tilt if it's used too much, but he does those tilts at just the right moments. Yeah. Also, all those shots don't matter if you don't have a good editor. And Patrick, I think it's pronounced Lussier, who went on to direct a lot of his own stuff. but he was an editor here for I think all 4 of them, or at least no, the first 3. But every choice that's made in that opening scene, every like not a second too early, not a second too late, that is the tightest like first 15 minutes that you will see like any 90s movie maybe.
Yeah.
And Smart Little, I mean, I don't think he gets enough credit for the choices he makes. Like what a strong director, especially that first movie is. I remember that shot of the house, Casey Becker's house, and you see the swing, and it's just moving a little bit. It's very horror movie to have a moving swing. And I always thought, even at the time, like, what if the killer was sitting on that and he'd just gotten up, you know?
Yeah.
But it's not until she's hanging from the tree at the end where I'm like, that's why they showed me a swing on the tree.
Yeah.
Because otherwise, if there was no swing on the tree, I'd always have to imagine like the killer like opening the backpack and taking out the rope and.
Yeah. Right.
You know. But it is.
Yeah.
You can see one. It's. Oh yeah, it's great.
Yeah.
Also, as far as this isn't a credit for choices now, but I just something being fortuitous is that Cotton Weary on paper is not much of a part. We're going to bring you in for the day, and you're going to walk into this police car and get in. And
we're going to bring in this accomplished stage actor.
And then look at the camera. That's all we're going to have you do. And even 1 year, I remember Liev Schreiber was a name by the time Scream 2 came out.
Yes.
And how lucky it was that they got someone who was so good.
Who could actually
as
act,
an actor.
Yeah.
What if you cast Joe Bob, sucks a lot, and then you're committing to him.
I wonder how
prescient.
prescient.
New name is Joe Bob sucks a lot. No, how lucky are you?
Yeah. It makes me wonder how prescient Wes Craven was with that role, but also just maybe not wanting to work with mediocrity, maybe wanting to cast the best people in every aspect of this production that he possibly could. Go on.
I don't remember the guy's name. God, I want to say it's not John Vernon, but who's playing the sheriff?
I don't know his name. Sorry.
Sorry,
Sheriff.
He's great.
Yeah, he is.
I love the bit where they're both outside the police station, and Sydney and Tatum go to the store.
Yeah.
Every time the sheriff takes a smoke, Dewey matches it with the ice cream.
Yes.
And I love these little ambitions. And then by Scream 4, he becomes the sheriff, and I think that's so sweet. But
yes.
But here's how tight it is. The shot at the end where he puts a cigarette out, he's wearing boots. Everyone in the theater, when he puts the cigarette out with his boot, notices his shoes and goes, ooh.
Right.
First of all, there's no way that guy is wearing that costume, but everyone's still in it. That guy, yeah.
Yeah.
Also, fun side note, it's one of the only parts of the movie that I think doesn't work and makes me laugh. And I laugh at the movie and not with it. It's the only time.
Okay.
I don't mind when Tatum and Sydney are hanging out on their porch talking about stuff, and then we cut to the bushes and the killer's in the bushes.
Yeah.
Fine. I'm fine with Mike Myers hanging outside of a neighborhood in a costume. It's fine. But when they go to the little liquor store and they're loading up food for the party that night.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
And then we cut to the, what I'm talking about. They cut to the fridges. And in the reflection of the fridge is Ghostface in full costume in a brightly lit liquor store. Imagine, if someone noticed him, he's like, chips, and chips. So, there's nothing to see here.
When there's a killer on the loose who everybody knows is wearing this costume.
Right, and he's wearing the costume you're not going to,
And he's being a creeper around teenage girls, too. Like, come on. I actually have one, too. It's funny to come on the heels of, me just praising Wes Craven for being so meticulous about casting every role. I don't believe this person was cast. I feel like this person was a day player, maybe, and was given, because it doesn't feel like he's saying dialogue. It feels like he's improvising and not well. It's hard to watch somebody not improvise well.
Oh, I'm
I'm
afraid of who you're going to say.
Are you?
Well,
it's at the party. It's at the
Okay.
party at the very end.
Never mind then. We're good.
Okay, good. It's at the party. I mean, like right before they get the call that the principal is like strung up and everything.
I know
like
who
that.
you're talking about now, though.
Now you know who I'm talking about. And I think anyone who's ever acted and had to deal with somebody who's at the side of you, who's going way over the top, not in a Matthew Lillard way where it's justified and connected and entertaining, but just in a way where he's just trying to take up as much space as possible. They're watching Halloween, and it's the kill in the kitchen where the guy with the glasses, can't remember his name right now, is like looking around the dark kitchen. Ooh, car backfire. He's going around a dark kitchen, and Michael Myers comes out and lifts him up and stabs him. Can't see shit in that scene except the silhouettes. And here this guy, as soon as Michael comes out of just the reveal of him coming out of the closet, oh no, not that blood, it's too red. Why did they do that? And then they start talking about Jamie Lee's tits. He's like, yes, yes, yes. And I'm like, oh my God, calm down. Fisher Price, baby's first film set,
One, he's terrible, and two, it ruins the effect that they're watching Halloween, because that plays if you've never seen Halloween, but it's not. Okay.
And we know it was scripted that they would be watching Halloween, because originally wasn't John Carpenter lined up? I mean, didn't Kevin Williamson write this for John Carpenter to direct? That was the original intention that I've heard. I think I've heard that. If it's true, I'm glad it didn't happen that way, because on one hand, I could see it kind of being John Carpenter's New Nightmare, because there's so much reference to Halloween and slasher movies with a knife in it. But in another way, I kind of feel like, well, Scream's perfect. I wouldn't want anybody else touching it. John Carpenter might have made a fine film. Who knows? But I'm glad it sounds like, I believe he turned it down and didn't want to do it.
And well, I mean, that worked out all the better, I think.
Is the legend, yes.
Yeah.
But that guy is my one complaint. That guy is my one complaint, yeah.
I have a similar complaint, but it's not a complaint. It makes the movie better for me. It's so good. It's when, I was actually going to bring this up earlier, when Randy's in the video store, and Stu's like, well, what's his motive then? And he's like, and he goes, in fact, I'm going to read the line because I don't remember all of it, but there's always some bullshit reason to kill your girlfriend.
Yeah.
Right when he says that, there's an extra in the row behind him in the video store who looks up right at him, almost even the camera, but she instead looks up to Randy and listens to him. And she goes, and that's the beauty of it all, simplicity. Besides, if it gets too complicated, you lose your target audience. And right when he says lose your target audience, she goes and walks away.
I have never noticed that.
You have to go back and watch that.
I will now.
She looks right up. God. One, it's funny because she's just listening to him ramble on and goes, this fucking guy, and walks away. But the fact that right when he says lose your target audience, he loses an audience. It's so good. He's probably the best extra I've ever seen in a movie.
That's pretty damn good. That's pretty damn good.
She's great.
Yeah, no, that and yeah, that kicking off like the whole meta discussion and self-consciousness. I love that gets built on after this movie. Another thing, just one more example. I have so many for Billy. Just watch the movie. If you watch it from Billy's perspective, the whole movie, Billy and Stu's, it's literally like catching them backstage. You know, when Stu fucks up and does something insensitive, and Billy's like, "Hey, called tact, fuckwad," or whatever he calls him, fuck rag, I think is what he calls him, and he's on the face of it, it looks like he's protecting Sydney, but he's really kind of like, "Hey, dude, keep it cool. People are gonna think you're a killer."
Right.
But I also love what I really noticed this time was right before Sid gives it up to Billy. She's talking about her mother and about how maybe she doesn't know her, but she's still been so afraid that she might become her. And Billy is listening to her like the biggest movie fan ever. He's so engrossed in what she's saying, but so disconnected from it. I love Skeet Ulrich as an actor. I mean, this performance alone, he's done for life. I understand he's quite good on that Archie show. Maybe one day I'll start watching it. But
that scene,
yeah. And then
that scene pisses me the fuck off now.
Okay, we'll get into that in just a second because of course. But what I love, like the cinephile in me loves watching him watch her like a movie,
Mm.
and then try to relate to her. Because his way in is when she speaks his language. When she says, "I don't know, like I'm the bad seed or something," and he's like, "Ding, ding, ding." And he's just kind of like, "Yeah, it's just like in Silence of the Lambs when you know."
Oh,
It's
it's
like, but this,
perfectly staged and written and acted.
yeah. But
I
what
just
pisses you off the most about it? I mean, I feel
again,
like it's obvious, but go on.
no, I'm too much of an adult now, if I can be such a
Yeah.
thing, where when she's like, "No, you're right," I'm like, "No, you're right," and she's like, "I just,
Yes.
I should just get over it," and I'm like, "No, this is horrible. Like, no, don't." Yeah, she's and the seed is planted when they're shopping in the grocery store and not the grocery store, but the liquor store. But she's talking,
Yeah.
she's doubting her intentions, and I just feel bad because I know that as much as 39-year-old me is very upset at her choice,
Uh-huh.
um, I guarantee you 39-year-old Sydney would look back on that and also be just as upset. So it's not just, some hang up that I have, but
Oh yeah. I mean, however old you are, I mean, teenage girls,
but succumbing to, I mean,
more so,
even
but
Tatum
yeah.
is bringing it up in the grocery store. So like
Yeah.
there are these voices.
Oh, that was one thing I wanted to cite was also just like Tatum straddling being a good friend and bad friend. I remember Bonnie was the first one because I never really noticed Tatum. I was just kind of like, oh, she's fun. And Bonnie, my bestie, she was the second one I watched. Second time around I watched it, I showed it to her for the first time. We watched it at my house. We started at like 5 a.m. because we'd been talking all night. And um, and she hadn't seen it, she wanted to. So I remember playing it. And I remember we watched it until the sun came up. So literally the sun was coming up outside as the dawn was happening at the end of the movie. I can't tell you how creepy that made it. I'd recommend viewing it that way. Like time it so that the end of your movie is like when the dawn is happening. You'll be uneasy. You won't feel safe in the daylight, or at least I didn't. I had to walk her to her car. It was an amber hue to everything that just felt unsafe. But I remember her being the first one to bring up, because we talked about it a lot afterwards. She hated Tatum. And I said, why? She said, she's the worst friend ever. And I was like, oh, why? And she said, because literally when she does the sleepover and Sydney has just, sidebar, sorry. Sydney has just punched Gail, and I feel like that's one of the first glimpses we get of like who Sydney becomes, is that close up on her face after she punches her, and her mouth is all tight, and she's just, the wind is kind of blowing her hair, and she looks like this Amazon warrior who I wouldn't want to be anywhere near her because she would kick my ass. And I'm just like, that's Sydney. We get little colors of it like before the big bad. But anyway, but she's just been attacked, she thinks, by her boyfriend, and Tatum is like playing around on the bed with her stuffed animal going, you're so cool, bam, super bitch. And then she's just kind of like, so you really think Billy did it? And she's just kind of like, I don't know, I mean, I've got all this evidence, blah 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 blah. She's like, oh, he was destined to have a flaw, I knew he was too perfect. It's like, we think he's a killer. Channeling Bonnie's rage.
She's a little too casual about, yeah.
She was so mad. The thing is, as an adult, like, I mean, I get that. I mean, she's just kind of riding the wave of trying to make her friend feel better, whatever. It's a choice. The thing that I like about Tatum, because she isn't the most empathetic person the whole time, but what I like about her as a friend, particularly as an adult, watching a teenager do this to another teenager, when they're talking about her mother on that railing outside, I think it's Sydney's house, and she says the Richard Gere line, which always, the Richard Gere gerbil story line,
Right.
so
It's a funny
random.
line, but you're also implying pretty casually that your mom was a slut.
Yeah, but at the same time, she's laying out the way Rose McGowan is playing it. She is literally laying out facts. The way she
Right.
does it isn't the most compassionate and the softest, but she's playing it softly and just trying, like, and the kindest thing she does in that scene is just like, maybe your mother was just a very lonely woman who made some mistakes or something like that. And I was just kind of like, oh, there's a good friend. I mean, she's challenging her, but she also, maybe, we don't know what Sydney's been like to be around this past year, and maybe this is Tatum's actual empathy at play, trying to get her friend to look at some things, because maybe Tatum's
Right.
hearing things that Sydney isn't hearing or doesn't want to hear, and maybe she's just trying in the softest, most ginger way she can, just one-on-one with her friends, to get her to face what could potentially be the truth about her mother, because there were stories about other men. Maybe her
And
mother was sleeping with a lot of people. Who
and
knows?
we do
Maybe
know for
Billy and Stu started those rumors. We don't know. Yeah.
we do know for a fact that Sydney is wrong.
Right.
So, and clearly there is enough, I'm gonna say evidence, but there are enough facts and things to lead you to that. But for her, the
Mm-hmm.
only person that's really gotten into her face about that is uh, uh, Courtney Cox. For some reason, I can't remember.
Gail
Gail,
Weathers.
like Gail, and who's not presenting it in the nicest of tones. So yeah,
No.
there's something to be said for the friend who's offering the advice to maybe just maybe look at it. Yeah, but I don't think she has enough life experience or tact to get her point across. But I do see what you mean about. But what if also this?
And she's also very protective of Sydney. Every time Gail comes running up to her, she's just like, no. She's always the
Yeah.
last one to like kind of dismiss her when they're moving away. And whenever she's approaching her, the one like, not right now. Listen,
Or when
I'm like,
Stu
okay.
is being stupid and stupidity leak,
Exactly. Like she does what she can, but so I'm like, okay, so I feel like there's a case to be made. I could make a
Mhm.
case either way. I feel like there's evidence for both arguments. I don't really have much more to say about this movie unless we really want to draw this out.
Well, no, I mean, I don't have anything heavy to say. I would just,
Yeah.
I meant to say this earlier, but I think it's cute that the following year, uh, Billy and Randy both played prostitutes in As Good as It
Oh
Gets.
God, and As Good as It Gets, yeah. That was weird too.
I just thought that was fun.
Skeet
And
Ulrich apparently had a much larger role
much
in
right, which is
that.
why his few scenes feel the dramatic weight of them is like too much for the amount of time he's given. But I just thought that
Yeah.
was fun. Like of all the people to play these man whores, I'm like, what a nice reunion.
Like
Uh,
maybe they didn't die. Maybe that's just what became of them.
one little thing,
Yes.
one little thing that I liked about this movie, it's so little, but I really appreciate it, is when Billy comes into Sydney's room and they decide to start playing around with some over the clothes stuff.
Yeah.
There's a cover of "Don't Fear the Reaper" playing, and
Yeah. Yeah.
it's a moody little,
Soft.
yeah. And
Yeah.
for quite a while, I always just took it as, well, here's a song playing. It's the guitar, and we probably licensed it, and it sounds kind of teenage moody. And
Yeah.
then you're like, wait a minute, "Don't Fear
It's
the
Don't
Reaper."
Fear the Reaper.
You're with
It's
fucking
right
Billy.
there.
It's
It
right
is
fucking
right
there in
there.
front of you, the whole goddamn movie.
Actually, and all the music cues. I'm glad you brought that up because the sound and the music figure in really, really well in this movie. We already kind of covered some moments, but Nick Cave and Bad
Oh
Seeds,
yeah,
Red Right Hand. It's
and
in the
Stu.
movie.
Although I think it's his left
What?
hand.
Yeah,
I think
but
Stu
it's
gets
in.
stabbed and it's his left hand, but
I don't remember.
stabbed.
It doesn't matter. I don't care.
Right.
It's a red. It's a red
Yeah.
hand.
Yeah.
But no, the thing is, it plays in the movie once. Iconic. Like, I mean,
Oh yeah.
iconic with the movie to the point where when they replay it in the sequel, you're like, oh, this is
Yeah.
on. And I don't.
And then they play it
And they
twice
open
in the
up
third one.
similar scenes with different music, but that one is the one. It's the
Yeah.
perfect marriage of entry into this, and also the only other thing is perfect point of entry to the whole movie. I love. We've gone over this before with Child Play. I love the font, the
Oh,
OG
yeah.
font of Scream, and the fact that we hear Scream as it's pulsing, we watch it go red, dangerous sounds of doors shutting or something. Don't really quite know what's happening, but it's like, oh, I'm ready. I'm in. That's probably the last thing I have to say about the
Although I
movie.
don't mind them switching to the other fonts for the sequels, but yes, for that first one, it really does work.
Yeah. Scares me more than any of the opening titles. This
In
one
fact, I
nailed
was
it.
always a little bummed that it was never called Scary Movie, because especially rewatching all these, I mean, because if anyone out there didn't already know, this was written as Scary Movie.
Yeah.
Then they decided to call it Scream.
Mhm.
And then Scary Movie is now forever associated with the Wayans brothers and the David Zucker Scary Movie.
Yeah.
But I mean, it's such a perfect title for what this movie is.
Also, well, because
And
I was
the
thinking, yeah.
sequels really would have, like, because they really lean a little more into the idea of movies, movie knowledge, filmmaking,
Right.
film fandom in the sequels. And I think this whole franchise, I mean, I love it no matter what. I love that it's called Scream, but like Scary
Uh-huh.
Movie is too perfect of a title, and it's still a shame that we don't get it.
Interestingly enough, there's another title that we do get, and this could lead us into two if you're ready to move on.
Actually, what I'm thinking is we might end it here and
Oh,
then
okay.
invite people back for more.
Okay.
We can have sequel discussion.
Okay.
So I would say, with that tantalizing, or do you want to leave us out with that?
Yeah. Well. How
With
about
your
we just
thought?
tease it? If you
All
want to
right.
know my thought about another title that figures in to this
Ah,
franchise that I think is equally visceral, shall we say, come back.
yeah. Come back for more.
We'll be
Goodbye.
here.